Tonight, for the first time, Mayor Kurt Schmoke of Baltimore and Mayor Marion Barry of Washington will answer your questions in a joint electronic town meeting as MPT News presents Ask the Mayors. Your host in Baltimore is Dave Durian.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a television first, not just for Maryland Public Television, but a first for Mayors Kurt Schmoke and Mayor Marion Barry as well. We are bringing together tonight the mayors of the two largest urban areas that impact the Maryland region to answer your questions. We want to give you and the members of our studio audience here a chance to talk with the mayors about whatever is on your mind. If you have a question for Mayor Schmoke, the telephone number is 301-337-4044. That's a Baltimore number, area 301-337-4044. We should point out that Mayor Schmoke has been unavoidably detained, we hope for just a couple of minutes, and will be joining us momentarily. We understand he's stuck in Beltway traffic, and unfortunately, even the mayor of Baltimore, Maryland can't do much about that. Mayor Barry joins us from Washington, along with my co-host Paul Barry from WJLA-TV in Washington. Good evening, Paul, and welcome to Mayor Barry.
Well, good evening, David, and thank you very much. I want to join you in welcoming Mayor Barry, and we hope indeed that Mayor Schmoke gets here in just a few minutes. We're sure he will be. Viewers in the Washington area will have, of course, the same opportunity to ask questions of Mayor Barry. The toll-free number here is 1-800-223-3678. Let me repeat that number, 1-800-223-3678. And we have an audience here as well at the Reeves Center. They will also have questions for the mayor. Mayor Barry, it is a pleasure to have you with us this evening.
Well, thank you, Paul. It's great to be here and participate with my colleague in Baltimore. I'm sorry he got stuck in a little traffic, but over here we've sort of temporarily solved that problem.
Take advantage of every opportunity, is that right, sir? All right, sir. Well, we will continue, of course, to flash the phone numbers throughout the program so that we can get to your call. And let's get started. Now we have in our studio audience a gentleman who is prepared to ask the first question of our mayor this evening. Good evening. Your name, sir, and your question.
My name is James Booz. Mr. Mayor, I would like to ask you a question about homeless. Knowing that your administration have done all they possibly could do for homeless, and we seem to have a great problem. Now, what I want to ask is there possible that we can recall Initiative 17 or repeal it or do something? Also, can we get some cooperation from Maryland and Virginia where they are sending their homeless over to the district? This is summertime and all of the shelters are about to bust at the seams.
All right, let's give the mayor a
Well,
chance.
I think the whole question of homelessness is becoming one of America's number one problem. It's not our number one problem, drugs are. Particularly homeless families and homeless individuals. We in the district, as you know, are very compassionate. We're spending some $14-15 million of our own local money. I do think we have to try to get at the basic root causes of that. Some people are put out of their shelters, out of their regular homes because they don't have the rent. They either get laid off or don't have any money. Some are put out because they have children that just do all kinds of things that the landlord does not want to happen. I think we do have to get the people in Maryland to know, and particularly Prince George's County, to start carrying their fair share. We think that about 20-25% of our homeless families are from Prince George's County. Now, at the present time, we put everybody up, but I think we got to stop that, and everybody got to carry their fair share. America is too rich and powerful not to be able to take care of its homeless. On the other hand, I don't think it should fall to local jurisdictions such as Washington or Baltimore to do that. The federal government ought to spend a lot more money on homelessness than it does. It could cancel the B1 bomber program, which is about $60 billion, and take care of it. But I think those of us who are now taxpayers in Washington shouldn't have to bear that whole burden.
What about the part of the question initiative, the repeal of Initiative 17, sir?
Well, even if we did that, I still think we have a responsibility to try to be humane. The question is who pays the bill. I maintain the federal government has a lot more money than cities and counties and state does. It wastes more money than we do, and they ought to pay most of the money for the homeless in America.
All right. All right. Is Dave ready with a question there? Dave, do you have a question from someone? Okay.
We do have a question, and fortunately we have a mayor here to answer. Mayor Schmoke has joined us.
Welcome, Mayor.
Well, I'm sorry, Mayor Barry. I was running on local mayor time.
Before we get to our first question here,
I started that way a long time ago, but I'm on time now.
Before we get to a question here, let me welcome you officially to our studios and ask if you have an opening remark or two, and then we'll get to some tough questions.
Well, I just appreciate this opportunity being with Mayor Barry. many people in our business community and our cultural community have been promoting the notion of the Baltimore-Washington corridor for a number of years, and talking about the closeness and kind of almost a twin city relationship. And we are growing closer and closer with our transportation facilities and the employment market. So I think this is a great opportunity to step forward in trying to promote this kind of regional cooperation.
Well, this is a television first, and I'm wondering why it hasn't been done before, frankly.
Well, you guys control that. We're willing.
Plus, Mayor Schmoke, I think that what happens that we're both good colleagues, and we were willing to participate in this because a lot of our problems are similar in Baltimore as they're in Washington, and you and I know that we have to work together to try to figure out how to do it. And both you and I have promoted the Baltimore-Washington corridor, and it's an idea whose time has come, and it just demonstrates when you get good leadership, you can always get anything done.
Well, let's go to our first question from our studio audience here in Owings Mills. Ma'am?
Georgine Edgerton, the Greater Walbrook Coalition. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm so glad you arrived safely.
Thank you, ma'am.
I am concerned about the asbestos problem in all our schools in Baltimore City. I want to know how the problem is going to be handled, and I do not want our children split up all over the city. It is a major problem here, and we need to make some decision as to how we are going to handle it.
Right. The federal government, as you probably know, has passed a law that will require us to remove asbestos from the schools, do an assessment, develop a plan, and then remove it. The one thing that they didn't do was they didn't give us the money to do this. We have set aside some resources, however, to do one major problem that we have, as you're familiar with in your neighborhood, the Walbrook High School. We're looking at alternate plans right now, and we may, in fact, put them, the students, in one building so that we don't have to split them up. But fortunately, we're at the end of the school year. The seniors aren't in. The rest of the students are going to take home exams now, and then we'll plan during the summer for what we're going to do for the next school year. But they will have notice. We're then going to do a whole assessment of our schools. We've done a previous one and found we don't have any immediate problems, but this asbestos issue is one that is troublesome nationwide, and it may eventually involve federal involvement more than just passing a law, but coming up with some financial help.
Hasn't it been mentioned in the past the possibility of litigation against parties you may feel responsible for allowing the asbestos in, like the police department in the first place?
We are involved in a number of lawsuits. In fact, we have, besides taking care of being sued in some instances, we are suing many of the manufacturers and installers so that we're trying to recover some resources. But I can tell you, for example, had we gone ahead with the police department asbestos removal, it would have cost us upwards to $16 million. And that would have come from other programs that we're trying to promote. So you can see how that would affect the overall quality of life in the city.
Well, and at Walbrook, they're talking about something on the order of $10 million to take care of that
if
problem.
we did the entire building. It is a tremendous problem. And again, as Mayor Barry mentioned, that type of situation, the asbestos problem, is hitting us all over the country and really cries out for national involvement.
All right, let's go to a question for Mayor Barry in Washington.
Yes, indeed. We have our gentleman with a question.
Mayor Barry, my name is Steve Callis. I live in Washington. You've been a very generous supporter of senior citizens programs, but this is a population, Mayor, as you know, that is growing, and I'm wondering, because of the fiscal constraints we all face, how you can plan on meeting the expanding needs of the senior citizens.
Well, we're very proud of what we're doing here in Washington. When I came in office, I think we were spending about $800,000 for specific Office on Aging, and now we're spending $13 million. Again, I'm sure that Mayor Schmoke and I will come to the same conclusions, that some of these problems involving our seniors, involving our young people, involving asbestos and homeless, cannot be solved just with local funds alone. The national government, and again, I'm not a big spender because of our deficit, but we have to look for them. But on the other hand, the 107,000 seniors in Washington are very fortunate. We do have a progressive agenda for them. We believe they should never be neglected, never disrespected. And we have the Golden Washingtonian Club, which where stores are getting discounts. We finally got the big three, Garfinkel's and Woody's and Hex, where seniors can go. There are about 800, 900 merchants in this town that does that. We also have a program where if someone commits a crime against the senior citizens, you get 1 1/2 time as much time as you are found guilty. That is, if you're going to get 5 years, you get 7.5 years. If you get 10 years, you get 15 years. We also have a commission on aging, which advises us on what we ought to do. But that's the fastest growing population in America. I believe our seniors have toiled too long, worked too hard, have given too much, sacrificed for a lot of us to be where we are. I wouldn't be here, and I don't know about Paul, I'm sure, if our ancestors had not worked as hard as they have. And I'm just thankful that we have seniors who are still alive, whose life in the twilight years of their life should not be the worst years, should be the best years. We also have health care. We have wellness centers. We have another unique program, which I'm very proud of. For those who are non-ambulatory, we have a device you can put around your neck, and there's a fire in your home, or you fall or something, you push the button, and immediately the fire department, ambulance service gets there in about 3 to 5 minutes. So seniors are important to me. I'm sure they're important to Mayor Schmoke. They're important to all of us because human life is precious.
Well, that sounds very reassuring, Mayor. Thank you very much.
All right, sir, thank you. And we go now back to Dave and Kurt Schmoke in Baltimore. Dave?
Let's remind everyone watching that you are given access to the mayors by simply calling the numbers for your area in Baltimore, 337-4044, if you have a question of Mayor Schmoke. And let's go to Scott, who has a question about the fire department. Scott?
Yes, I'm wondering why you have all this community support, why don't you change it to a volunteer system instead of paid?
Volunteer fire department?
Yeah, like the counties have.
Oh, no. In order to protect a complex urban system the way we have now, we have to have a well-paid and very professional fire department. I think even many of the counties now, as they become more and more urbanized, you see them shifting from the volunteer department to the full-time professional department. This is a career. And you need expertise. These guys have continuing education programs. You need a very professional group of firemen and firewomen also to do this job. And so I'm pleased with the professionalism. I just recognize that it's tough sometimes to bring about modernization when you want to.
To say the least. Let's go back to Messrs.
Mayor Barry, I hope you never have to close a fire station in Washington, D.C.
Well, we haven't had to close one. I hope you haven't. We got another little problem here, Mayor, in the sense that the union people are insisting that we keep 5 people on a truck. My own view is that as you get more modern equipment that can pump water much faster, you got to make the adjustments. But we're going to deal with that too. We think we can do it with 4 and still protect life and safety. We did that on our truck company, went from 5 to 6, from 6 to 5. But I agree with you, Mayor. In these large urban cities, you got to have professional firefighters. I appreciate the volunteers who work in the counties and who do all this kind of work. And a lot of them who work as volunteers also work for the D.C. Fire Department. I'm sure they work for the Baltimore Fire Department.
But in an urban area, you have different needs.
You got to have a full-time, dedicated, on the job, be there when you have to need them. And we have one of the finest fire departments of any in America.
Mr. Mayor, we have another question for our studio audience. Good evening, ma'am. Would you state your name and your question, please?
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Ilona Evans McNeil. Recently, you and other mayors have been talking about decriminalizing drugs. Do you see in the next 5 years a society, and particularly a city, in which the government will do that, in which private industry or the government will take over the sale of drugs so that drug addicts can go and purchase their drugs for 25, 50 cents? A city in which our young people will no longer be employed into the ranks of selling drugs because there will no longer be a profit in it. Do you see that in the next decade?
Well, I get the impression, and Mayor Schmoke can speak for himself, but what we're facing here in America is a drug epidemic where there are about 6 countries that produce 95% of all the cocaine that comes into America. And then there are about 5 or 6 countries in Indochina that produces all the heroin that comes here. It's $150 billion cash and carry business. No credit cards, all cash and carry. We also find that in 1988, there's 15 to 20% more drugs on the streets of America than there was in 1987. Now, notwithstanding the fact that here in Washington, we've arrested some 33,000 people, 14,000 of whom are for drug-related charges. So, Ms. McNeil, as you look at our so-called war, I'm not sure we ever started a war, but whatever we started, we're losing it. It's hard for me to convince a young person to go to work for $3.35 an hour when they can make $50. And so I've come to a point where I want to debate on this. I'm not saying whether we ought to decriminalize or legalize, but at least ought to be full debate on what our options are. How do we take the profits out of this war? We've had 127 deaths in Washington since January 1st.
Well, that's exactly what Mayor Schmoke is calling for as a national debate.
70% of those are drug-related, and we cannot put our heads in the sand, act like it doesn't exist. We have to at least talk about what our options are. In a democratic society, we're intelligent, we're bright enough, we're strong enough to stand any kind of debate, and then look at the ups and downsides. If it looks like the downside is worse than the upside, you go down. You don't do it. But what I can say this: most of us mayors are vitally concerned that we're about to lose several generations of people, not just young people either, because ball players and athletes can't consume $150 billion worth of dope.
Mr. Mayor, as you can certainly understand, Mayor Schmoke in Baltimore is more than anxious to jump in here. So let's go back to let's go back.
He started this debate, and I appreciate his leadership on it. It was a bold move on his part.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Barry. I'm not going to go into it in great detail. One thing that I'm pleased to announce, though, is the fact that since this debate started in earnest a few weeks ago, Congressman Rangel has now agreed to hold those hearings that I have proposed, that is to have this national debate, public hearings. And he would like to do it in Baltimore at a federal facility here, but he may do it in Washington. It'll be either the end of September or October 3rd. We will have these hearings where we can bring national and international experts and bring citizens in to talk about it. And I guess the most important thing that I've tried to say to people is that I'm not calling for a retreat in the war against drugs. I just want to fight the battle on the battlefield that drug dealers understand, and that's money. They don't want to make ours a nation of zombies. They just want to continue to make billions and billions of profit. And the engine that's driving all this crime in our community is the profit to be made in drugs. And so I think the best thing that we can do for our children is to put drug dealers out of business. And we're not doing it by just getting tough, because that just inflates the price of the drugs. It means more people have to break into more homes and shoot more folks. But if we go at this business by taking the profit out, I think we'll make a substantial contribution. And I just remind people, when they think back to Prohibition, and I know that none of us were around at that time, but as you think back to it and you remember all the crime associated with the trafficking in alcohol, what destroyed the mob and the gangsters and helped end the corruption related to the trafficking in alcohol was not J. Edgar Hoover, it was not the FBI, it was ending Prohibition. That took the profit out of it. It deflated the market, and it helped improve the quality of life in our cities. So let's debate it at least.
Let's show you how things have gotten. Peru produces about 50% of all the cocaine in America. The American government worked with the government of Peru to do a spraying with herbicides. And here's a major American corporation, Eli Lilly, had agreed initially to sell the herbicide. They don't want to produce it. And all of a sudden, they got chicken. They backed off of it. They would not sell that product so we can go and spray in that valley over there and kill those cocoa leaves. That shows how powerful the drug dealers are. In my view, Eli Lilly is just as guilty of contributing to this problem as a major cartel in Colombia or Peru or Brazil or Paraguay or Mexico or wherever they are. That's how vicious the situation is.
Can this problem be corrected? Can you take the profit out of drugs? Can you take the money away from drug
we
dealers?
don't know, Paul.
Without it, if not legalizing, certainly nationalizing drugs. Can it be done without
We don't know. Nobody's ever dared raise the question as to what our options are. You know, we arrested somebody just last week with 29 pounds of cocaine at Union Station. About 2 weeks ago, another 29 pounds. This is about $4 million just week that we caught.
And Mayor Barry, just to add to that tragedy, over here we arrested last week an 8-year-old with 14 bags of cocaine assisting an older drug dealer. So our community is really maybe triply victimized. We've got high addiction rates, high crime rates, and drug dealing is an employment option for our children, and that's just wrong.
Mayor Schmoke, do you see the day when the drug problem in Baltimore, and there are random killings, no doubt, concerning drugs, it seems to me that in Washington they may have a little bit more serious problem if there are actually gang wars over drugs. Do you see our society in Baltimore heading that way, into that serious a problem?
Well, it's a very serious problem. I hope we don't get the gang problem, but we have a similar problem that Mayor Barry described about the incarceration rates. We've got a jail here designed to hold 2,100 people, and we've got 2,650 in. A state prison system designed to hold 9,500 that's got 14,000 in there, and the drugs keep coming because we cannot prosecute our way out of this problem.
Right. Ma'am, do you have a question for Mayor Schmoke about this whole area of drugs?
Oh, no, this is Ms. Gaddy.
No, I don't have a question about drugs. My question is about homelessness.
Yes, ma'am.
Last January the 5th, that started the crisis, the cold weather crisis. And I think every servicing agency was really running scared. I know everybody did everything they could, but the question I'd like to ask our mayor, what will you do while the weather is good right now?
Well, we just...
Before the weather sets cold, so
Absolutely.
we could do a better job at housing before winter comes again.
What we did, one of the things that we did, we just appointed a homeless relief advisory board to begin the planning process for not only the cold weather, but the warm weather. Okay. We, in this budget, doubled the amount of money that we've given to the emergency shelters so that many of them can continue through the summer months, because we found, just as you mentioned, that we were spending a lot of our resources when it was cold and when people's attention was focused on the problem, but we weren't spending enough during this period. So now we have refocused our attention, and I think you'll see this real continuum of services, private providers, and some public help to try to deal with this problem.
All right, let's go back to Washington and a question for Mayor Barry.
All right, Dave, I think we have a phone question right now. And let's now turn to our audience out there and see what is on the minds of a viewer, and a question for Mayor Barry. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mayor Barry, I'd like to congratulate you first on your fiscal policies for the district and the fine job you did from when Steve did. Hello?
Hello? Yes, we hear you, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to congratulate the mayor on his fiscal policies with the district, because he inherited a debt-ridden district from the Congress when he took office. But my question is concerning the tax issue. It appears that district residents are being federally taxed twice, meaning that there's a tax stipulation in everybody's paycheck that is on a state basis, but it's not a state tax because the district's not a state. It goes to the federal government, then it's reapportioned back to the district. And I wonder if that's a violation of the Constitution in itself. Without representation, there should not be any taxation.
All right. So
and there's a question. There's some support for the district and the statehood movement.
All right, so let's get some response.
But as you know, the early colonial fathers went to war against the British around this very same issue, taxation without representation. We pay more federal income taxes per capita in Washington, next to Alaska. And we need, and ought to have statehood, ought to have 2 senators and 2 Congress people. There are 117 world capitals in the free world. And until last year, there were only 2 didn't have representation in the national government. That was Brazil and America. Now, Brazil is done, so we're the only country in the so-called free world that does not have representation in our national legislature. I like to get to a point, quite frankly, either we all have representation, or we're going to be like Puerto Rico, where you don't pay an income tax. Now, I trade that any day for people who do that.
Well, Mr. Mayor, let's talk. You know,
I also need a commuter tax, too.
Yes.
I know people in Maryland don't like that.
Well, let's talk about the taxes. Because
but if you live in 43 other states, if you live in New Jersey and work in New York City, you pay 2 taxes. You pay State of New York a reciprocal income tax, the City of New York a commuter tax, and the toll authority, toll money. So you got to pay 3 ways to get in New York City. And we ought to have the same right here. But people in Maryland and Virginia understand that if they do that, they'll lose some money because you deduct from your state income taxes. But we ought to have it. I mean, we should not be discriminated against. We're not second-class citizens. We go to war. We had more people die in Vietnam War probably.
Well, you know, a lot of these people coming in come across from Baltimore.
Yeah, I was hoping that you would talk about things we could agree on. I don't stay away from baseball teams and things like that.
I don't expect the mayor to agree on everything because we got to serve our constituents. So I'm speaking here in Washington to my constituents about my constituents.
Well, I support statehood, Senator, and. But you can keep the taxes.
The solution is for the federal government to give us all more money to run our cities. We have no problem.
One question on tax very quickly, because you just recently talked about the District Public Health Commission, the agency responsible for many of the health programs. Now that program is $5 million in debt, and you've stated that there isn't enough money to pay for such programs in the future. And if there aren't, that you'll eliminate the programs. Are you serious? Or?
Absolutely. My view about life, Paul, is that I'm willing to propose more money to be spent, more taxes. I don't mind paying more. Those of us who make more money ought to support well-run, well-managed, and efficient programs. And if we want a good program for the homeless, someone has to pay for it. No such thing as a free lunch. If we want free community care, which I support, for pregnant women, regardless of their income, because when a baby cries in Cashapp, the mother shouldn't have to worry whether it's a $300 cry or $500 cry.
But that takes money, Mr. Mayor. Are you willing to ask for a tax increase
Absolutely,
this year?
I am.
You will ask for it?
Absolutely, I am willing to. On the other hand, I want to demonstrate to the people that we're well-run, we're efficient, we're not frivolous with that money, we take every dollar seriously. Whenever D.C. government employees, they give 8 hours work for 8 hours pay. There are a few who may not. If we find them, we don't want them on our payroll. But people can't continue. We haven't had a major tax increase in this city in 10 years. In 10 years, and yet we still have expanded services. Our school budget has doubled. Our budget for the homeless is almost quadrupled. Our prison budget has gone from $69 million to $187 million this year, and somebody got to pay for that.
So a tax increase is necessary? I mean,
well, I won't say it's necessary. We either got to choose to provide these services efficiently and effectively, or choose and pay for them or not.
All right, so let's go back to Baltimore, and Dave with the Mayor's Schmoke.
Yeah, Mayor Berry, what's the tax rate in D.C. compared to our $6 one in Baltimore City?
In terms of what tax rate?
The property tax rate.
Our property tax rate is $1.22 per 100 of assessed market value.
You may do valuation differently than we do, though.
Well, we do a full market value, and for businesses it's $2.13. For apartments it's $1.84, $1.64. Hotels, well, 84%.
Without the tax tables, we may be talking apples and oranges, right. but let me ask you, Mayor Schmoke, about the $6 rate here in Baltimore. Is it going to be the same? Stay the same?
Oh, well, we're in a position we can't raise the property tax only because that's the single most anti-competitive thing that we can do, because we're surrounded with these booming jurisdictions that people would move out and business would move out on us. But we're at such a huge rate right now that I don't think anyone would support that. So we have to become more efficient, and that means not doing business in quite the same way, but that can be painful when you're trying to downsize certain services.
All right, let's go to a phone question from one of our Baltimore area listeners. Hi, your question, please.
Hello, my name is Dr. Sharma. My question is for Mayor Schmoke. During your election campaign, education was your top priority, and you promised radical reforms. Your current budget offers very little hope. Are you satisfied with the promise that you had made? If not, what can we really expect from you in the coming years?
Well, first of all, I didn't promise radical reform. I promised to improve the system, and I tried to make clear that improving the system meant getting the entire community involved and doing it incrementally. And I set my sights on starting with the elementary grades and working our way up. I think what you can say about my budget is that it's sort of a down payment on many of the goals that I hope to achieve. What we, as you probably know, what we've been able to do for next year is to restore art and music programs to our elementary schools, which had not been in the system for many years. we're able to reduce class sizes from kindergarten, first and second grade. We have this Commonwealth program working with the business community to provide opportunities for jobs and college to young people who will also give us high rates of attendance. So there are a lot of good things going on. Obviously, we're getting a new school superintendent that will assist in this project. So I think you can say that steps towards the improvements that we want to make have been made, and that each year we will see steady progress, but no radical reform. And because it's the type of process that it involves getting a whole community to work with you and making those changes gradually, but in a sustained way.
On the subject of education, what do you make of the Baltimore Teachers Union claims that there is virtually no spine in middle management in Baltimore City schools?
Well, a problem has occurred. I mean, I understand what they're saying. When you have a situation where you have a superintendent, you're in a search, the person who's in the position now knows that they're about to leave, there are some problems in decision making. But that will be improved. Again, we have a common problem. I share a problem with Mayor Barry that he just, or the Washington, D.C. system, went through a long process of looking for a new superintendent. Getting a superintendent is just vital. You need strong leadership in order to make the kind of improvements in the public education system. And if you have that leadership, that can serve as a rallying point for a whole community to get involved in improving the schools. And that's what we need, because we don't have the resources to do it without community support.
So do you expect any kind of a job action in the fall, as they're talking about in the city?
No, I expect to make the improvements that are necessary so that they won't have to take those job actions.
All right, let's go back to Washington. Messrs. Berry.
All right, Dave. Yes, indeed. We have with us now a lady who
before we get the question, let me say that I agree with Mayor Schmoke that we have to do all we can to improve our school system. Here in Washington, we have an elected school board, but obviously we have to also provide the budget for that.
Yes.
But it's increasingly difficult to get superintendents. These jobs are tough, and not that we don't have tough people that can do them. The pay is not quite up to what you get some other place.
But you control the budget, the amount of money that you allocate to the school board. Why not give them more money?
Well, the problem is not wanting more money. In terms of Washington, the superintendent can't make more than the mayor makes, and that's a charter amendment. You know.
Well, they've decided here the superintendent can.
Yeah, well, listen, at least I know you're not going to be moving to Baltimore anytime soon.
I wish they could. But the mayor's right, and Mayor Schmoke's right, and says it has to take the entire community, well, those who have children in public schools, not to mobilize to make our schools work.
All right, let's take this question from this kind lady. She's been waiting. Good evening, ma'am. Your question, please.
Good evening. My name is Ethel Delaney Lee, and my question is related to the schools. I'm concerned about the prevalence of truancy. We do have a compulsory attendance law which states that parents can be fined $10 for every 2 days a child is absent without an excuse, or sent to jail for 5 days, or both. This law is not enforced. I had a brief conversation with an assistant corporation counsel who stated that the jails are too crowded and a lot of the parents receive welfare. My question, Mr. Mayor, is can you use the power of your office to influence the courts to enforce this law by fining those parents who can afford to be fined and having other parents do community service, preferably in the schools?
Thank you.
Ms. Lee, that was a very excellent question. You know, I think we'll approach it on both sides. One, somehow or another, we've lost a great deal of our value system. And that was the time that parents showed the operational love a lot different than they do now. And so we have parents who don't know where their kids are in the day or at night. And so I think we got to try to just get them, keep talking about parental responsibility. On the other hand, we find ourselves in a catch-22 situation where there are mothers of children who are truant, who themselves are on AFDC or welfare. So if you take the $10 or $20 from them, they may be then depriving their children of some food or something. But I do think we ought to look at the question of community service. And the question is, if you order someone to do community services and they don't do that, or do you then put them in jail? It's a very complex one. You've given me a great idea. I commit myself to putting a lot of energy and effort and get you and some others involved. We're looking at what options we can do to get our children back in school. We do have a serious problem, particularly at the high school level. I think in Washington we're doing excellently at our elementary school level. We've done a lot of improvements here in our junior high. But I think at our high school level we have a serious problem.
Mr. Mayor, all things being equal, regarding our question, would you be in favor of parents whose children don't make it to be fined or to go to jail?
I'm in favor of doing something to put the pressure back where it belongs. Everybody seems to think it's the school system responsibility to make kids come to school. The school system responsibility to have a good program that attracts them to school. But it's back to the parents, whether it's community service, whether it's fine, and whether it's something. We got to find a way to put it back on the parents. My view is if you bring a child into this world, you have a responsibility to do all you can to make sure that child succeeds and to get that child on the right value system.
Right. Thank you, ma'am, for your question.
I'm just going to say, Mayor Barry, that it's one of the unfortunate facts of life that we have a law similar to the one that Ms. Lee described. It's actually a little bit tougher, and we unfortunately have had several parents that were actually prosecuted and sent to jail because of their failure to send their child to school. It was a clear understanding, though, on the part of the judge that the parents knew that the child wasn't going to school and kind of aided and abetted, as opposed to some parent who was out there working very hard, trying his or her best, and the child was acting wrong. These were parents that were almost complicit in this, and they've been sent to jail. It's tough, but hopefully some combination of carrot and stick will do it right. And we're trying to give a carrot to kids by providing them with jobs for high attendance and also providing financial assistance for those that want to go into college.
Well, there's a misconception that the police are responsible, as they were in the old days, I guess, for making kids go to school.
Yeah,
they're not.
Under our law, the police cannot arrest a child for violating our law, which says that you have to be in school between 8:30 and 2:30 if you're between the age of 6 and 16. We can't do that.
Should they?
Well, I would like to do something similar to Washington with the notion of a truancy center, where you could have people whose responsibility is to get the student to one of these centers so the child doesn't get an arrest record. They get some disciplinary record through the school system, and then you try to get the parents in some kind of counseling.
Mayor Schmoke, here we do have the authority for the police to pick up truants, but we don't arrest them. What we try to do is take them to the school and take them to the principal. Right. We also have a computerized system where we let the school system know what kids are out of school. We have a situation here where someone could have been arrested and detained for a couple of days, and they go back to school and say we were out sick or something. So we're working with the school system to identify who the person is. I think we've got to start early, though. These problems don't start in high school. Most young people who are truant start developing these bad habits in the 4th and 5th grade. That's what we found. And they keep continuing and keep continuing. We let them slide through. But there are no easy answers to this, except as a community, we have to rally around this, because in the year 1990, 75% of all the jobs in America will require a high school education or equivalent skills. And so if we don't get our people educated, we're going to be a lost generation.
All right, till we go back to Baltimore, Dave, and to Mayor Schmoke.
And a question from our studio audience here, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I'm Ray Little from Northwest Baltimore.
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to know if you think that the new state legislation regarding handguns will have an effect on crime in Baltimore City, and if so, would you favor even stronger legislation?
It's tough. We are now in communication with a mayor who's got one of the toughest handgun laws in the country, and yet we still have problems with handgun violence. I think tough laws in the handgun area, or tough regulation of the sale of handguns, does help somewhat. But there are an awful lot of people out here in our community, our society, unfortunately, who are going to go get the handguns regardless of what we do. What did help us, though, was that court decision in Maryland that made the manufacturer of a Saturday night special liable for injuries caused by that weapon. And we, again, in America, you start talking money and pocketbook. What that did was it helped to dry up the sale of these small concealable handguns in our community. And I think that was an effective action by the courts. And I hope that the existing law that Attorney General Kern will implement, I hope that has the same impact.
And yet you know, as a former state's attorney, that drug dealers, the ones we read about all the time, don't favor the cheap handguns. They're using the high-quality, fully automatic,
right,
strictly illegal.
But what it did help us, when we had this law against the Saturday night special, what started to happen was that it did dry up the sale, and the small concealable gun is the weapon of choice for the young person. The big drug dealer, yes, is using these magnums and the Uzis and everything, but we really worry about the teenagers and the kids on the street, and that was the gun of choice for them. And hopefully we'll be able to dry that up over the next couple of years.
How far, in general terms, would you like to see the Maryland legislature go in regulating gun sales?
No, I think that they've taken the right step so that we have done in Maryland is try to strike a balance and say, yes, there are some guns for legitimate sporting purposes. You should be able to have access to that. But those weapons whose only purpose is shooting human beings, we want to control that, and we want to make sure that they don't get on the streets. And I think that that's a good balance between those who feel we have the absolute right to bear arms and those who are concerned about shooting in our communities.
Ms. Schmoke, I'm going to propose fair decision to the City Council here. And you're right, we do have the strongest gun control law, but our guns are now on the ground. Very stringent maximum minimum sentences for those who carry automatic weapons, semi-automatic weapons, or Uzis, etc. I'm going to suggest probably a minimum of 5 years, only in a way that it sends a signal that we're not going to tolerate any kind of guns on our streets. And I'm not sure that's going to work either, but at least we got to say to the criminals, they get them, a lot of those come from Virginia, quite frankly. Because
not Maryland.
Now, thank you if you didn't say Baltimore.
No, Mayor. We did a lot of tracing. We found that Virginia, because it has such a lenient law, you go down in 3 or 4 days. We've had a guy to buy 40 weapons in about 4 days. But I think we got to do all we can to send signals to people that we're not going to tolerate these semi-automatics and these other kind of things on the streets. And I know law enforcement like to answer to all of this, but at least signals got to be sent that guns, the ideal situation would be for the United States government to ban the manufacturing, the transportation, distribution of any kind of handgun or semi-automatic weapon except the law enforcement people.
Well, Mayor, you know, community pressure and support does help out in this regard. We had about 4 years ago some very difficult incidents. We started to see a lot of handgun violence either in or around our schools. And we went as a community to the students and said, you got to help us out. Let us know who's carrying the weapons. Call in. It's, you know, put the pressure on people to say it's not cool to flash a gun or you won't respect somebody. It really helped, and we got the students involved. And each year, over the last 4 years, our incidents of violence have gone down just dramatically in our school system. And it's been not because of increased prosecution, but because we got the students involved also. So getting communities involved and helping us out on these law enforcement problems really does make a big difference.
All right, let's go to a phone question for Mayor Schmoke. Mr. Isles. Yes, sir. Your question, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Mayor Schmoke.
Yes, sir.
I'd like for you to expand upon your concept about a community development bank for Baltimore City. And I'd like to find out your views as to the participation within such a bank by community development corporations that are neighborhood-based.
Well, what I'm trying to do is similar to what's been done in Chicago and New York and others, and I don't know whether Mayor Berry has a mechanism like that. We're trying to create a financing mechanism that would almost be like a bank to support organizations that are doing work in neighborhood commercial, improving neighborhood commercial areas, or developers who are going to attack the problem of these abandoned houses, that is to convert these homes to useful properties for low and moderate income people. The idea would be to provide either loans, loan guarantees, and in some instances possibly grants. And we're working on that now, trying to develop this concept so we can introduce legislation in the fall. And what will happen is that as soon as we get the concept fully developed. We'll send it around to neighborhood groups and ask for input, try to improve it before we actually submit it to the council.
You're talking about generating lots of new money in the community, but not necessarily spending a lot of city money.
That's correct. It would, we would get money through grants, through contributions from union pension funds. We would get contributions from banks. There's a law called the Community Reinvestment Act in which banks are required to invest a certain amount of money into neighborhood programs. And we'd like to have our development bank as the conduit for their contribution, and then look at selected programs around to help businesses in the neighborhood commercial strips, as I said, and attack the abandoned house problem, because that's one of the terrible problems that we have now, contributing to homelessness, and also we'd like those properties to get on the tax rolls.
Let's go back to Paul and Mayor Berry.
Thank you, Dave, and we have a question now from our guest in our studio. Sir, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Harrison Etheridge. It seems to me that one of the problems facing young people in D.C. is the lack of worthwhile full-time job opportunities. And perhaps that's one of the roots of the drug problem. I'm aware that the surrounding counties seem to be very aggressive in attracting new business, that sort of thing. And I'm wondering what efforts our Office of Economic Development are making to aggressively attract business, light industry, to come into the district and locate here.
Harrison, we've been working very diligently to try to attract businesses. You know, we're not a blue-collar town as such. What we've found is we go out talking to people either in America or outside of America. We have to break down the image that we are a federal government town and everybody who works here works for the federal government. We don't. Even in Washington, where there's a big federal presence, 6 out of every 10 jobs is in the private sector. We have attracted a number of jobs here. In fact, we've had a net gain of about 35,000 jobs here. The problem we're facing is in the suburbs, particularly in Virginia and some parts of Maryland, we find that there are employers who want people to work and don't have workers. And so we have about almost 9,000 D.C. residents now since last year working in the suburbs. As you know, downtown is being developed, our neighborhoods are being developed, and so we are attracting a number of jobs. But the basic problem for the structurally unemployed and for those who have records of having been in jail or records of drug addiction, we still have employers who are not enlightened, who want to employ people. Also, we have the problem of competition. You'd be surprised how terrible this drug problem is out here in terms of the economics of it, and trying to get people to work legitimately for $5.50 or $6.50 an hour at that kind of level, as opposed to selling drugs. But we have made a lot of progress. Our summer job program, as you know, is the best in the nation, and I've talked to Mayor Schmoke about how we have done ours. We've promised everybody in Washington a job. There have been 19,000 people signed up already. Last year we had about 24,000. And so we think jobs are important. But it's going to take the entire community mobilizing against this drug. I mean, I keep talking about this.
Well, are you suggesting, sir, that the fact of the matter is in Washington, we are higher among adult males, the national average, we're higher, and certainly much higher for teenagers. Now, are you suggesting that the only way this can be taken care of is by taking care of the drug problem, or is there something that your administration can do to provide jobs?
For instance, our official unemployment rate is about 6.1. The lowest it's been in 15 years. Now, obviously, the unofficial rate is much higher because we don't count those who have dropped out and are looking for it. I still maintain, because of how many programs that we put together, how many businesses that we attract, until we deal with this serious epidemic. And people, I'm telling you, it is devastating in terms of the profits in it, in terms of the people who are selling and buying drugs, in terms of merchants who are taking $8,000, $9,000 worth of cash for jewelry and for cars. And to me, that is the #1 priority of mine, in addition to doing other things, because we don't do that, Harrison. Suppose we did bring in 10,000 jobs. We're trying to get the federal government to keep as many jobs as we can here. And we don't have people ready to go to work. The employees are not going to come in. And I still maintain that we got to, as a community, I'm not sure how Mayor Schmoke feels.
No, I think you're right, and I don't think many people realize that type of competition that we're facing for our young people, that in terms of summer employment, drug dealers are among the leading employers in the inner cities of America. And a lot of people don't appreciate that, but I see it all, and I know you have, and that's why we're trying to go after these profits to be made.
And I think, Mayor Schmoke, we got to keep sounding the alarm. I mean, I've tried it. This is my 10th year. I've said the last 4 or 5 years I've been talking about it. It's been abortion in the wilderness. The RAND study showed it was just as bad in the suburbs of Washington, until we just say this is our total commitment. And we're going to go to war like we did in World War II or World War I, or as we did in Vietnam, even though we shouldn't have been there. We're not going to solve these problems. Our housing problems, our jobs problems can be solved, but if we don't have, we don't get rid of these drug traffickers and this profit, I'm going to tell you, we're in serious trouble.
Let's go quickly to a studio question here in Baltimore. Sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm Bill Madison, president of 7 Avenues Improvement Association. Mr. Mayor, one of your campaign promises was to improve communication between neighborhood groups, the umbrella groups, and the mayor's office. Yet in the past few months, it seems the opposite has happened. I don't know whether this is due to the transition period or not, but what I would like to know is this trend going to be reversed in the near future?
Well, I guess I'd have to take exception to it, because I do think that we've had a lot of communication with neighborhood groups. I have not only a community affairs director, I've made sure that all my cabinet officials attend neighborhood association meetings. We had, as you recall, that town meeting on crime, which was one of the I don't think we've ever had anything like that in the city, and invited the participation of community groups. But I'll tell you one area where you may have hit on something, and that is we have so-called mayor's representatives in the multi-purpose stations around the cities. All of those individuals serve at the pleasure of the mayor, and they have been under review, and I've made changes in many of them, and there has been a transition. So if there's been a gap there in terms of communication there.
That what has happened, that it has effectively cut out communication in some periods, because a lot of the new people do not know the neighborhoods, for one, and are just learning their jobs. The transition period was abrupt. Well, and I felt this was detrimental.
Well, the problem is that, you know, I came in after one person had been in for 15 years, and his deputy was there to serve out that term. So there were a lot of people in there who felt entitled to stay, and they weren't leaving of their own desire. So you're right that the change was a little bit abrupt, but I hope that over the next 6 months you will find better communication.
Let's go very quickly to a telephone question here in Baltimore from a neighborhood that's been in the news lately. Hi, your question.
Okay, hi. Good evening, Mayor Schmoke.
Yes, ma'am.
I think you're doing a great job.
Trying
my
best.
question is, what is your opinion of the situation in Hamden, and what can the citizens of Baltimore and the city of Baltimore do to better race relations?
Yeah. Just to explain for our friends in Washington, we have a neighborhood in our city, a small enclave that's almost 90% white, and in the last couple of days we've had some racial incidents. We are hoping that we can get all the people in the neighborhoods who are real strong neighborhood activists and neighborly to come out and say we represent the majority. What you've seen has been an exception and not the rule. And one of the things that I think will help is that upcoming, it's either this Saturday or next Saturday, is the centennial celebration. This Saturday coming, the centennial celebration of Hamden, and I'm hoping to promote people from all across the city, whites, blacks, every color, every sex, that we can come to Hamden and say we care about this area. We believe everybody can support it and promote it, and let's all join in the celebration of the Hamden Centennial and show that the good neighborly people are the ones that make up the majority, and not the small handful that have been causing problems.
In about 2 minutes we have left, let's go quickly back to Washington and Messrs. Berry.
Mr. Mayor, we are almost out of time. You don't have a race relation problem in the city, but you've had an image problem in the government. Are you convinced now that you have control of what's going on in the government, that you've gotten the wrongdoers out, and that things are
Well, we've always had control.
Have you, sir?
Always had control. But in any large in any large organization, you're going to have one or two people who take advantage of the public trust, public treasury, and when it happens, we root them out. But 99.9% of DC government employees are hardworking people with great integrity, and you certainly have a mayor who has spent 28 years of my life, my most productive years, working for people. We got another U.S. attorney now that understands his role better and will prosecute wrongdoers as opposed to posturing in the newspapers. But we're doing very well here. We got the same kind of problems that Mayor Schmoke has in terms of homelessness and drugs and et cetera. But Washington's on the move. Mayor Schmoke and I are going to work together to try to create even a better relationship between Baltimore and Washington. He's biased towards Baltimore, I'm biased towards Washington, but we both love the region.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for being here and being such a good sport. David, toward back to you.
Let me give you, unfairly so, about the final 30 seconds, Mr. Mayor.
Well, since I came in late, no, I really appreciate this opportunity. I think it's wonderful. I agree with Mayor Berry that we're trying to promote this region. I think this will be seen as one of the fastest growing and one of the best places for people to come and live and do business through the next century. And we're looking forward to providing the kind of leadership that everybody can be proud of, and that people around the country will say, indeed, Baltimore, Washington region, that's the place to be.
All right. If you at home didn't get an opportunity to ask a question during the program, there is still time. Write your question down and send it to us. All of your questions will be forwarded to either Mayor Schmoke's office or Mayor Berry's office, and they have promised to respond to every question, as they always do. Our address is, Ask the Mayors, Maryland Public TV, Owings Mills, Maryland, 21117. That's Ask the Mayors, Maryland Public Television, Owings Mills, Maryland, 21117. Once again, I'd like to thank Mayor Schmoke here and Mayor Berry for joining us, and my co-host in Washington, Paul Berry. This has been the latest in our series of electronic town meetings. We hope to return soon with more of your government leaders so that you'll have a chance to ask them about what's on your mind. Now for MPT News, I'm Dave Durian. Thanks for joining us, and good night.
For a printed transcript of tonight's program, send $3 to Mayor's Transcript, Maryland Public TV, Owings Mills, Maryland, 21117. That's Mayor's Transcript, Maryland Public TV, Owings Mills, Maryland, 21117. Residents of Maryland add 15 cents sales tax.